This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Leaders of the world's 20 largest economies met for 3 days starting June 25th in Toronto, Canada. The group of 20 discussed the best ways to guide the world economy to a stronger recovery. The G20 is 19 countries and the European Union. Before the meeting in Toronto, international charities held the first ever Girls 20 Summit. The goal was to bring the economics power of girls and women and the importance of women's issues to the attention of G20 leaders. Organizers invited 20 young women from each of the G20 member countries. They discussed the United Nations Millennium Development Goals and better ways to meet them. The goals include cutting poverty, improving access to health care, and providing education to all children. 19-year-old Anwar Basunbui from Saudi Arabia said many Saudi women are interested in working, but they need permission from their husband or other male guardian. And there are restrictions on the professions they can join. She says her culture still believes that men are biologically more qualified to lead or rule women. She says the Saudi leadership has not failed women. Saudi women have not yet asked for what they want. Irem Tumer was the 19-year-old representative from Turkey. She says Turkey has approved many legal reforms as part of its efforts to join the European Union. But these have not necessarily been put into action. She worries about violence against women. She says the safety of girls still remains a big problem. Laws have been passed, and many police officers and other officials are being trained about this. But more widespread awareness and education for all girls is necessary to solve this problem. Irem Tumer said she would carry home 2 messages from the Girls 20 Summit. The first is the need for education. The other is the need to empower women and let them take part in business and political decision-making. The United Nations estimates that females aged 10 to 24 are 1/8 of the world's population. Many of them are the main providers for their families. Yet, in the developing world, many are unable to enjoy even the most basic human rights. And that's the VOA Special English Education Report. You can read, listen, and comment on our reports at voaspecialenglish.com. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and iTunes at VOA Learning English.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Last week's report on bullying brought so many comments online, we are going to take this time to share some. One person who gave no name or country described an experience with a parent-teacher association. I have been a victim of bullying in a PTA group. It is not just a problem for teenagers. Adults also engage in bullying activities, but it is usually verbal abuse by spreading lies to ruin your reputation or isolate the victim from the rest of the group. Since we are the role model of the next generation, our behavior will shape the future society. Vicky in Taiwan still remembers being scared by bullies in junior high school. And Jung Kim wrote, "Even we Koreans are made fun of by our own. If you're not cool with the popular people, you will be laughed at." Jeannie from Brazil says children should be taught to respect differences. And Kelly in the United States suggested that parents should spend more time with their children. If they are taught to be considerate when they are very young, they will not treat other people in a mean way. Joruji in Japan called for improving communication among students, parents, and teachers. Farshad, an Iranian in the United States, and Salim from France both suggested using psychologists in school to help control the problem. Some people complain that bullying is not always taken seriously. A commenter in Vietnam wrote, "We as parents and teachers should let children understand that they will be punished if they do wrong, and the punishments won't be only reminders or warnings." But not everyone agreed. Denisenko in Ukraine says what we call bullying is part of the socialization process. Children need to know how to defend oneself, how to establish relationships in a group. If laws or teachers or police will protect a child against bullying, he or she will never become an independent person. And several of you expressed sadness at the case of 15-year-old Phoebe Prince. Bullying may have led to her suicide. Monim Al-Hassi from Libya wrote, "I'm really astonished how such a beautiful, nice girl can do such a thing. She made a mistake when she listened to those who criticized her. They were jealous of her. God bless you, Phoebe Prince." You can find last week's report at voaspecialenglish.com. And that's the VOA Special English Education Report.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Halt International Business School has campuses in Boston, San Francisco, London, Dubai, and Shanghai. The Halt Global Case Challenge is a competition based on the idea that solving world problems requires a good business plan. Teams compete for prizes of $1 million to help an organization with efforts to solve problems like hunger, poverty, and disease. A Halt student, Ahmad Ashkar, created the challenge for teams from business schools around the world. This year's challenge deals with poverty. Teams will compete to develop business plans for 3 non-governmental organizations. Solar Aid works on energy projects in East and Southern Africa. Habitat for Humanity builds low-cost housing. And 1 laptop per child builds computers for governments in developing countries to supply to poor communities. That group is taking part in the competition for the 2nd time. David Batley from Solar Aid says his group works with local entrepreneurs to bring power from the sun to rural communities. I think the winning team will be one that uses a combination of really innovative thinking and taking account of the practicalities of operating in Africa and the challenges that represents. Sandy Parakilas took part in the first competition in 2009. The challenge that year was to help an organization reach 100 million people in 5 years. One of the 3 top prizes went to his team from Carnegie Mellon University for their business plan for 1 laptop per child. They were struggling with competition from Microsoft and Intel, and they were having trouble basically making money. So it was a great opportunity for some business students to come in and create some ideas for a not-for-profit to be more profitable, essentially. Howard McNally is Chief Executive Officer of the HALT Global Challenge. He says it's the equivalent of about 20,000 hours of consulting advice from the world's smartest, youngest people. Mr. McNally says the students learn about world problems and the opportunities that might be available for them in the market. And it's also a tremendous opportunity for the NGOs that we're working with to get the kind of advice that they're going to get about their vision and their goals. The 5 HALT campuses will hold regional competitions in February. Finalists will be chosen in New York in April. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Some young Cambodians are learning a new sport, skateboarding. The country's first skateboard park is located on the grounds of a local charity group at the edge of Phnom Penh, the capital. 15-year-old Chea Sopanet has been skating for about 6 months. When I see the different styles from skateboarding, especially from the best skaters, I just want to be like them, he says. Sports like Khmer boxing and soccer are wildly popular in Cambodia. But Chea says skating has already become his favorite sport. The skaters are learning tricks like launching off a jump or half pipe and flying through the air on their narrow wooden boards. A non-governmental organization called Skateistan Cambodia organizes weekly programs at the park. Skateistan started its work in Afghanistan. Rory Burke works with the group, which expanded to Cambodia last year. He says skateboarding is definitely not a typical Cambodian pastime. He says they want to use it as something that says, hey, this is something different. Skateistan partners with local groups that work with young people. The park is on the grounds of the group known as PSE, where children attend school and learn a trade. There are almost 120 participants. Many come from troubled lives. Sean Burke says for some, skateboarding is a chance just to be a kid for a couple of hours a week. He says he hopes the program will help them build life skills through sport. 17-year-old Song Rota is a student at PSE. Sometimes I don't do well on topics like math, he says. I feel bad when I find it hard to keep up with my lessons. So that's why I skateboard, to improve my bad feelings. He says he began skateboarding more than a year ago. Before he started training, it seemed very easy, but it was very difficult to learn tricks, and he got hurt a lot from falling off. Rory Burke says learning to deal with the difficulties is part of the lesson for these young skateboarders. He says it's pretty daunting to get on a skateboard for the first time. And then, when they drop in for the first time and ride some of the ramps, it's pretty scary. It kind of teaches them, hey, you're going to fall down a bunch, but you've got to get back up. Skateistan, Cambodia plans to open the country's first public skate park later this year in Phnom Penh. For VOA Special English, I'm Mario Ritter. You can watch a video about the skateboarding program in Cambodia at voaspecialenglish.com.
I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Education Report. President Obama talked a lot about education in his State of the Union speech in January. He said, "We need to out-innovate, out-educate, and outbuild the rest of the world. If Americans want to win the future," he said, "then they also have to win the race to educate their children." The president said, over the next 10 years, nearly half of all new jobs will require education that goes beyond a high school education. And yet, as many as a quarter of our students aren't even finishing high school. The quality of our math and science education lags behind many other nations. America has fallen to 9th in the proportion of young people with a college degree. 2 years ago, Mr. Obama set a goal to regain the world's highest rate of college graduates by 2020. He says the responsibility to give every child a chance to succeed begins not in classrooms, but in homes and communities. He said, "Only parents can make sure the TV is turned off and homework gets done. We need to teach our kids that it's not just the winner of the Super Bowl who deserves to be celebrated, but the winner of the science fair." President Obama talked about his Race to the Top competition. It offered states money to develop plans to improve teacher quality and student performance. Also, he called for preparing 100,000 new teachers in science, technology, engineering, and math over the next 10 years. Mr. Obama offered to begin debate with Congress on immigration reform, and he linked that issue to education. He said, "Today, there are hundreds of thousands of students excelling in our schools who are not American citizens. Some are the children of undocumented workers. They grew up as Americans and pledge allegiance to our flag, and yet they live every day with the threat of deportation. Others come here from abroad to study in our colleges and universities. But as soon as they obtain advanced degrees, we send them back home to compete against us." The speech came the same day the Education Department released the latest results on student progress in science. The goal is for all students to perform at the proficient or advanced level. But only about 1/3 of students in grades 4 and 8 and 1/5 of 12th graders did that in 2009. Just 1 to 2% of students performed at the advanced level. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Dyslexia is a problem that interferes with the ability to recognize words and connect sounds with letters when people read. People with this learning disorder may also have problems when they write. Dyslexia is not related to eyesight or intelligence. The problem involves areas of the brain that process language. Brain scientists are studying whether they can predict which young children may struggle with reading in order to provide early help. John Gabrielli at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology is leading a study of 5-year-olds in about 20 schools in the Boston area. He says, "We partner with schools that have kindergartens, and in this study, what we do is, for all the children whose parents permit them to participate, we give them a brief set of paper and pencil tests to look at which children appear to be at some risk for struggling to read." So far, 50 of the kindergartners have been examined in a machine that shows brain activity. The goal is to study 500 children using fMRI, or functional magnetic resonance imaging. The scanner uses a high-energy magnetic field and radio waves to look inside the body. Written tests are not always able to identify dyslexia or other problems. Professor Gabrielli says children can differ a lot in their abilities from day to day. He says brain scans may offer a more scientific way to identify problems. And with reading problems, he says, early identification is important. All the literature is that for intervention, behavioral programs, educational programs that help children overcome reading difficulties, the younger the child, the more effective they are. Reading problems are not usually identified until a child is in the 3rd or 4th grade. The longer the wait before children are recognized as poor readers, he says, the less these interventions can help. And, as Professor Gabrielli points out, poor reading can make education a struggle. Reading is everything. Even math and science have textbooks. During the brain imaging, the children are given tasks related to reading. They work with letters and sounds of language. The brain scans measure the extent to which certain parts of the brain become active while the children do the work. The neuroscientists say they are pleased with the early results, but still have a lot more work to do on the study. For VOA Special English, I'm Mario Ritter. For more education news, plus activities for learning English, go to voaspecialenglish.com.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Millions of high school students have read To Kill a Mockingbird. The novel by Harper Lee offers moral lessons about racial justice and respect. It tells the story of a young girl named Scout and her father, Atticus Finch, a lawyer. He defends a black man wrongfully accused of raping a white woman. In the end, an all-white jury sentences Tom Robinson to death. The book is set in the American South in the 1930s, but it was published 50 years ago on July 11th, 1960. It came out as the civil rights movement in the United States was gaining strength. Laws and customs in the South, however, still kept blacks and whites mostly separated. A mockingbird is a kind of gray songbird. The book gets its title from something Atticus Finch was told in his childhood when his father gave him a gun. Atticus Finch says his father told him it was a sin to kill a mockingbird because they don't hurt anyone, they just make music. Melinda Bird Murphy is head of the Alabama Center for Literary Arts. She says the moral of the story is be kind to one another, show human empathy and sympathy. Ms. Bird Murphy has read the book 4 times. She is a native of Harper Lee's hometown of Monroeville, Alabama. The author, who published only the 1 novel, is still alive, but rarely speaks publicly. Some people say To Kill a Mockingbird treats racism in a way that is simplistic, even offensive to blacks, and out of date in today's America. Still, it has been translated into more than 40 languages and has sold over 40 million copies. It won a Pulitzer Prize and is often required reading in high school. Gregory Peck won an Academy Award for playing Atticus Finch in the 1962 film version. The story takes place in a town that Harper Lee called Macomb, but she based the characters on real people she knew growing up. Since then, Monroeville has changed a lot. A number of African Americans serve in the local government. The courthouse, made famous by the book, is now a museum. A small shop and a fast food restaurant called Mel's Dairy Dream have replaced Harper Lee's childhood home. In Monroeville and around the country, fans of To Kill a Mockingbird are celebrating its 50th anniversary. Events include readings, discussions, and movie showings. And that's the VOA Special English Education Report.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Imagine you are a student in Mexico, and your teacher asks you to write a report about the country's ancient Aztec civilization. You now can do your own research on the subject through the World Digital Library, or WDL. One of the 8,000 items listed on this website is the general history of the things of New Spain. It was written in the 16th century by a member of a Roman Catholic religious order. Friar Bernardino Sahagún lived in what is now Mexico. He liked many qualities of the Aztecs and wrote 13 books about them in Spanish and Nahuatl, the Aztec language. The books are stored in Florence, Italy, but you can read every page and see every picture with the World Digital Library. The library has at least one item from every member country of the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO. UNESCO and the U.S. Library of Congress launched the WDL in 2009. Since then, more than 25 million people have visited part of the collection. The library provides free access to thousands of objects of cultural and historical importance. The library is looking for information about Arabic and Islamic science, says Musa Marawa. He is a WDL researcher who works on all of the library's documents in Arabic. Arab countries and their libraries are strong supporters of the World Digital Library. Mr. Murawa says the library shows the United States as a partner with Arab countries in an area other than military or security matters. The library also is helping countries make electronic copies of their documents so that they are available to computer users around the world. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Prasuti.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Cranes are large birds with long legs and necks. In Japan and other East Asian cultures, they represent luck and long life. Japanese tradition says a person who folds 1,000 paper cranes gets the right to make a wish. Some school children in the United States have been folding cranes. They want to show they care about the victims of the March 11th earthquake and tsunami in Japan. Almost 40 Japanese American students attend Somerville Elementary School in Ridgewood, New Jersey. But all 525 students at the school have heard about the disasters. So they have decorated their school with paper origami cranes. Their wish is for a speedy recovery for the Japanese people. Art teacher Samantha Stankiewicz says the activity gave students a way to express empathy for victims. She says, for children, the folding of the cranes has been a really positive way for them to feel like they're actively engaged. One boy said, "The crane is a symbol of hope, so we try to have a lot of hope for those people in Japan." And a girl at the school said, "It makes me feel really happy that everyone's caring for another country." And that care was not just in the form of paper cranes. The school principal, Lorna Oates Santos, says children at Somerville Elementary raised about $2,000 for disaster relief agencies. The two agencies they chose were the American Red Cross and Save the Children. The school also has a television club that produces weekly programs on different subjects. Fourth grade teacher Gabrielle King is the director of the club and says the students were involved in the school's efforts. When the earthquake happened, she says, the children wanted to know what they could do to inform other students and raise awareness for the people in Japan. So they decided to do a show on the earthquake and to also make the origami cranes. Some American children have shown their feelings for the victims in Japan in other ways. Yasuhisa Kawamura is Japan's Deputy Consul General in New York. He says one young girl brought a painting she had made to the consulate. The painting showed the two countries, Japan and the United States, shaking hands over the ocean and saying, "We are with you." Mr. Kawamura said consulate staff members were very moved and touched by this young girl's expression. The East Asia program at Cornell University in the United States has a lesson plan and directions for folding origami cranes. You can find a link at voaspecialenglish.com. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report in Special English. More and more children in Liberia are leaving school to work in diamond mines. 15-year-old Mike Coleman dropped out of school several months ago. He left to search for diamonds in western Liberia to help his parents. The country's Ministry of Lands, Mines, and Energy says that Liberian diamond mines employ at least 1,500 children. Nora Kwai is the head of a junior high school in western Liberia. She says that more than 200 students, half of the school, dropped out this year to work in the mines. Liberia's unemployment rate is nearly 85%. The World Bank estimates that 95% of the country's population lives on less than $2 a day. Work in the diamond mines is difficult and dangerous, but the possibility of earning $50 for each diamond is too good for many people to turn down. Employing anyone under the age of 18 in diamond mines is illegal. But many mine operators are willing to hire children who are small enough to fit into the narrow tunnels and tight spaces of mines. Thomas Willey heads the Liberia mining entity in western Liberia. He says a worker's age does not matter to mine owners. And he says the operators do not force children to work for them. But Mr. Willey says the Ministry of Education should put measures in place to keep students in school. The United Nations Security Council helped ban the mining and export of so-called blood diamonds in Liberia in 2001 during the country's civil war. But the United Nations ended the ban in 2007. The diamond mines are again operating, increasing the demand for young workers. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Prasuti.